What I didn't realise until much later was everything she was saying to us, all the stories that she would recount, they were an oral history of what she had had to endure, what she had found, what she had come to see for herself. And it made an awful lot of sense to me when I reflected on everything years later when I was old enough to appreciate.
Welcome to a new episode of Most Memorable Journeys. I have a very exciting guest today, somebody that I met at the Diaspora Forum here in Cyprus, where I met many people who were on my podcast, and I'm always grateful to Paul Lambis for bringing all these interesting people. He is a former radio and TV presenter, personality, the founder of Donikian Media, which is a lot. I want to know a lot about that. So we'll find out everything now. Welcome to Most Memorable Journeys, George Donikian.
Elizabeth, how are you?
I'm fine. Is it Donikian or Donikian?
No, Donikian is good. That is the more formal and correct pronunciation. Many Australians struggle with anything that is too complicated. When you live at this end of the world, at the end of the known universe, so to speak, they struggle with any, when I say they, the collective broader Australia struggles with anything that isn't too Anglo. If it's English, they can cope with just about any name. But if it's beyond that, if it's outside that realm, then they do struggle. Whether it's because they don't have the courage, or they're intimidated, or they plain don't care. But I've always found that we've had to make allowances, especially in my formative years in Australia. I was born in Sydney. My father arrived in Sydney from Athens in the 23rd of December 1949. So it was a long, long time ago. He brought mother here in 1951. They married in Sydney, and of course that's where I and then my brother were born. And for us, it's been a journey of discovery, immigrant children, or the children of immigrants who were effectively refugees. My father, his family have been refugees for a couple of generations. By that I mean my grandfather had to flee for his life from Ottoman Turkey when the things changed at the turn of the 20th century, and he got out of there. And he got out of there during the burning of Smyrna, dived into the harbour at the time, and swam to 3 warships which were there, French warship, an English warship, and an Italian one. They were there trying to maintain their neutrality, and the last thing they wanted was anyone coming on board that might impact them. The English and the French made every endeavour to scare whoever was swimming towards the ship away. My grandfather swam to an Italian ship. They were kind enough to pick him up and drop him off at a nearby Greek island, which I think the world of, and it probably explains why I have a soft spot for all things Italian.
You know, I have questions now after all you said.
Go right ahead.
Things to say. Like, one thing that people don't actually realize, people who are listening, is the story of the Greeks who were in Smyrna, and in Istanbul, in Constantinople. And also, not only are you Greek-Armenian, but also from where the Armenians had to flee. So there is a lot of history in what you just said in the last 2 minutes. And we can't go into details here because it's too short. But for people who are listening, it's definitely worth learning a little bit about this.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's crazy what happened at the time. I don't know if you've ever watched that. Did you ever watch the movie? I don't know what it's called in English. It's
The
called
Promise.
Politiki Kusina.
I know Politiki Kusina. I was there for the premiere in Melbourne many, many years ago. It's fabulous.
Beautiful. And I think for somebody who doesn't know much about this whole thing, that's one movie to watch to get a little bit of an idea what happened.
Yeah. MGM made a more recent film featuring Christian Bale, and it was called The Promise.
Okay.
The Turkish government was very keen to shut it down. but did get a lot of exposure around the world. You can find it on Netflix and others, unless the Turkish government is still making sure that they keep it on the back burner. But it's a remarkable film made under the auspices of Kevorkian, who, of course, owned MGM, and it was his parting gift before he passed away. It was his way of saying to all the people of the world, never forget. And that was the promise, to never forget what had happened at the turn of the 20th century and to never see it happen again. And lo and behold, here we are, all these years later, and we're seeing it. We're seeing it in the Middle East.
That's
we're seeing
crazy.
it in Ukraine and Russia. And it seems to be that COVID has set off so many moments of anguish and dissent and frustration. And we're even seeing Azerbaijan wanting to stretch its muscles and push into Armenia yet again. I mean, how much more do they want? They were always part of the Union of the Soviet Union, the USSR, and they were satellite states. Now, of course, they feel that they can flex their muscle. It's it's 2025, and you would think the world would have grown up, would have matured to understand the challenges, and we should be able to, work and live together. The Armenians and the Turks and the Greeks did it for hundreds of years, but something stirred at the turn of the 20th century, and nationalism rose to such a degree that people lost their heads.
Isn't it crazy that humanity
Yeah.
never learns? Shouldn't we know? We've seen it so many times, and it just and I think the worst is, what's happening, especially because I'm here in Cyprus and we're very close to the Middle East. You see it happening, you see it in the news, everybody sees it, and nobody does anything.
Well, Cyprus is even more remarkable. Its history, its position makes it truly unique. I mean, just think about it. With all this bombardment we've been seeing, with all these rockets being fired, you can see everything from Cyprus. Yeah?
Yeah.
And when the Turks light fires, you can smell it, you can hear it, you can do almost anything. I even read a story of when the crocodiles, saltwater crocs, leave some of the waters in Israel. They can make their way to Cyprus. Not that many of them, but some do, which tells you just how close Cyprus is to everything. It's close to Africa, close to Europe, and of course close to Asia.
Yeah.
It's an extraordinary position.
A 20 minutes flight to Beirut. It's really
but more importantly, it's stuck. It's British, it's Turkish, it's Greek, but it can't be any of the above. It can't join with Greece. It mustn't join with Turkey. And of course, Britain says we must be here. At least 3% of the island must be within our keeping. It probably helps to explain why the government seems to be on this treadmill and going nowhere fast. Mm-hmm. Is that reasonable, Elizabeth?
Totally. I think you explained it in a nutshell. And unfortunately, the way things look, it's never going to change. It won't change. And of course, it's the geographical location, because Cyprus is part of the Middle East. Cyprus is not part of Europe when it comes to geography.
No.
We are really.
But that's why it's so fantastic when it comes to be a banking hub.
Yeah.
That's why we see so many. Cryptocurrency now? Cryptocurrency firms in Larnaca are lining up. In Limassol, it's more Russian money, is it not?
It is.
Wow.
Well, it's this, now I always say this is not a political podcast, because I know that we are getting.
But the world is politics.
I know. But, it's so difficult to actually. I'm Swiss, you see, we are neutral. We don't talk about these things.
Elizabeth, you might be neutral, but you know what your surname means in Greek?
I know, Doufexis. Yes.
What does it mean?
It's a Doufexis. It's a gun.
Yeah, a gunman. Yeah, Doufexis means a gunman.
Very true.
A marksman. Yeah. So you're in unique.
My husband's name. I adopted that.
It's a beautiful name,
It
and
is. And it's very unique,
bless him.
actually. There's not many here in
No,
Cyprus.
no, I've not met too many Tufeksis, but it's a gorgeous name. It means a lot, and it's part of that history. I
True.
mean, that's what surnames are. If you
Yeah.
understand, if you care to learn, a surname gives you so much information, but only if you inquire.
Yeah, it can give you it's either a place or a profession or it's something, it
Well,
could be
yep.
even a nickname. We'll start with a nickname.
Well, Donikian means the son of Donik. It's like Donaldson. In
Uh-huh.
English, we have Donaldson.
Yeah.
Well, in Armenian, you can say Donikian.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the son of Donik. You
Now
follow?
tell me, why do you
Yes,
know the arrival date, actual the 23rd of December 1949? How do you know the date when your father
I
arrived?
asked.
Oh, I see.
This is what the son of a man who I love very much, and I lost, and he left us too early, way back in 2016. He spoke 7 languages. He was an automotive engineer, a motor mechanic. There was nothing he couldn't repair. There was no one he couldn't converse with. I kept saying to him, you either should have been the Pope or an archbishop or a diplomat. The last thing you should have been was what you are. But he seemed very happy. He always asked. He always wanted to know more. And even as he neared his 90 years, he wanted what I said to him. What do you want for your birthday? He said a computer. So he wasn't someone stuck in the past. He understood and appreciated the past, and he said, we're going to learn from it. But the thing he used to say to me is, why do you keep asking me why? I used to ask him question after question after question. Where do we come from? When did you land here, Dad? Why did you land here? And he said to me, we were meant to land in Sydney, but there was a maritime dispute. The port had been closed, and the only avenue was to land at Station Pier in Port Melbourne and take a train from Melbourne up to Sydney. That happened just before Christmas in 1949.
This is crazy. This is why I love doing this. I love this podcast. It's a lot for myself because I love learning. I have spoken to so many different people and I have learned so much about so many different history, about where people come from. And another thing that you said, he arrived in 49 and he brought your mother in 51, did he know her before or was it an
Yes,
arranged?
they were girlfriend boyfriend, and what my father did was when he left Greece, and they left Greece because of the turmoil. Europe had been shattered. Greece had been knocked around, especially following the evil times of the Greek Civil War, which was yet another stab in the back for all those Greeks who had to endure so much during World War II, the Italian occupation and the German occupation. The last thing they wanted was for Greeks to fight one another, but they did. And there were some terrible atrocities that have never, even to this day, Elizabeth, never been addressed. He left. He left with his father, Ashot. He left with his stepmother, Meline. He brought his beautiful sister, Sirvat, and his grandmother, Marise. Marise was another who had made the long trudge out of Ottoman Turkey and made her way to Greece. So they all had stories. And my great-grandmother, Marise, would speak to me and my brother in Turkish. She was so traumatized by having to leave her home that she always was very careful about letting on to outsiders, the children, who they were and what we were. And the last thing she wanted to give to anyone was that we were Christian children. You see?
Oh
She
my
didn't understand
God.
that Australia was a more open place, a more forgiving place, that didn't really understand the complexities of Europe and the many travails that the European people had to endure. So there she was in the middle 50s in Australia, and I'd say to my mother, why is, little Yaya or my great-grandmother speaking to me in Turkish? Why isn't she speaking to me in Armenian or Greek? And my mother used to defer and say she's been through an awful lot. All she wants to do is protect you and protect your brother and protect your cousins. And she was wonderful. What I didn't realize until much later was everything she was saying to us, all the stories that she would recount, they were an oral history of what she had had to endure, what she had found, what she had come to see for herself. And it made an awful lot of sense to me when I reflected on everything years later when I was old enough to appreciate. So I got a marvelous insight to a tremendous oral history of that time that you don't get. You don't get it.
There's nothing more beautiful than storytelling, isn't there? And actually having somebody who listens, who is interested. Now, tell me, what language did you speak at home? Because you're Armenian,
We
but
spoke Greek because Mum and Dad were both born in Athens. So the first language was Greek. I was christened Greek Orthodox, which probably explains where I lean the most. But we had Armenian surrounding us, my uncles and my grandfather and my grandmother and my cousins would speak to us in Armenian, and my uncles would also speak to us in Turkish. So my auntie, my grandmother, my great-grandmother would speak to us in Turkish at given times. So we had all those languages, but no English. No English. It meant little or nothing until I had to go to school, and that was my first real dip of my toe into anything other than Greek, Armenian, or Turkish. And it was a shock.
I can imagine it was a shock, but I believe that the way you grew up was very, very beautiful. It was very, very real, very traditional. And, I always say that my kids grew up here and I always spoke to my kids in German because I knew that they would learn. When once they go to school, they learn the language.
Yep.
I was never worried about that. And you obviously learned English very well enough to become a TV presenter. So here we are.
Well. It's interesting. I if you consider my career and reflect on this, there was absolutely no way in my understanding of how Australia worked that when the time would come, the television network that was about to start, no one in their right mind would have given a young ethnic boy of Greek-Armenian heritage the best job in Australian television, the biggest job in Australian television, and that was being the face of multicultural Australia. That was 1980. It was an awful long time ago, and Australia didn't quite know what it was about to see. But what we did all those years ago was put a window to the world and showcase the globe and its many colours and its many cultures and bring them back home in this English portal. We brought the languages, we brought the film, we brought the art, we brought the music. And anything that wasn't understood, we subtitled it because we introduced this brand new technology called subtitles. Because if you reflect, subtitling is something new. It was new technology way back in the late 70s, early 80s. And it was a way of breaking down the ethnicity. You had ethnic radio, for example, in Australia from much earlier, but it was a closed shop. If you didn't speak German, if you didn't speak Italian, if you didn't speak Greek, those language programs meant nothing to you. But on television, you had to make it accessible to everyone. And the last time I checked, the mother tongue in Australia is English. So we subtitled everything in English, and we had subtitlers, this new career path for educators and others to come into our television station and create new languages, new narratives, and tell new stories to a whole new audience that couldn't get enough of it. And here they are, nearly 50 years on, and they're a very much different broadcaster to the one we launched way back in 1980. But I was given the unique role of being the first news anchor. And I did that for the better part of nearly 10 years, and it was an extraordinary opportunity for a young boy, and it's given me a wonderful career, one that's lasted 50 years.
I didn't like what you said before. 1980 is not long ago, is it?
It is a long, long time ago. It is a long time ago.
No.
My radio career started in 75, and I never thought I'd ever end up in television, because in Australia in those days, they didn't look that kindly to the ethnic communities. It was a bit like some of the workers we see in Cyprus today, for example. A great many of those menial tasks are given to all those outsiders. The Cypriots don't have the time or the desire to do it. So who's going to do it? Well, we'll get the young Polish boy or the young Polish girl. We'll get the African children and the young Africans who want a start in Cyprus. Well, we'll give them a start. We'll give them one of these menial jobs, and they can earn their keep, they can earn their right, and they can grow into whatever they're going to become. But they're going to start at the bottom. It's like this totem pole. We're not going to give you the top job. You're going to have to earn that the long way. I somehow, by hook or crook, got this unique opportunity to jump to the top of the queue, and it put a few noses out of joint. But the people that gave me that opportunity, that there aren't too many of them around. They had a job to do. They wanted to create something that had never been seen on Australian television before, and they couldn't go the normal pathway. And that's why I think they chose a boy who sounded English or sounded Australian, but who looked European. And remember, you're looking at a very much older version of me. I came with jet black hair, Elizabeth.
I've seen it.
And my moustache was jet black. So this is what happens when you spend too much time in front of the camera. The lights wash you out.
I've seen a picture, and you actually showed me a picture when we were
Yeah, it was frightening, wasn't it?
No, I think it's just how young people from these places look, and that's totally fine. And I think one thing that you now mentioned is an opportunity, and you were given an opportunity and you took it, because I think one thing about opportunities in life is that I believe that we all are presented with the same amount of opportunities, but most people are afraid to actually grab them.
To embrace it. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah. You're absolutely right about that.
It's because sometimes an opportunity means leaving the comfort zone, leaving something ordinary. And at the beginning, when you leave the comfort zone, it shakes a little bit, doesn't it? And that's
it does.
What people are afraid.
It's like cutting the umbilical cord for a second time.
Yeah.
I can remember my father said to me, "Where are you going? You know you have a job here in Sydney and you have a family that wants you. Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to Queensland, Dad." Queensland, compared to New South Wales, is like, imagine now we're in Limassol and I've got to go to Székesfehérvár in Hungary, a long, 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 long way away.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they almost speak another language, even though it's English. I mean, that's how far and how strange Queensland was. And I had a radio station up there saying, "We love the sound of your voice and we're prepared to give a young Sydney boy a start." And I had to drive my car 2,500 miles. And you know what? My father said, "You're not going by yourself. I'll come with you." So he put his businesses on hold. And he made sure he put his foreman in place, and he said, "I'll see you in 3 weeks." And he came up with me to make sure that the people who were employing me were legitimate, they were real, and that they understood the cut of my jib, and my father got to see the cut of their jib. And when he was secure and safe and he thought I was in good hands, he left me and he said, "I'll see you in 6 months' time." And he came up with Mum 6 months later to make sure that I was progressing and making the right sort of moves. That shows you the love and the care that my father had for both his children.
Yeah, well, and I think also the respect, the fact that he actually allowed you, or no, not allowed you, you would have probably done it anyway, but he gave you his blessings and he came with you. I think that's beautiful.
And that road trip, I remember like it was yesterday. We stopped at half a dozen different places in order to sleep overnight, to have dinner, to have lunch. And I spoke to my father about everything. And when I reflect how fortunate at that time was, and how I reflect on how special it was. It's even more poignant now because we covered just about every bit of territory, and he got to understand how I thought and what made me tick, and he realised it was the sort of ingredients that had been instilled by him and Mum that one day would bear fruit, and he would be able to sit back and relax. And it wasn't that long. It was about 5 years later when my father watched me. Basically, on the first night we broadcast the news, introduced what turned out to be SBS, the Special Broadcasting Service, to Australia. And that was the day that that was the day that I morphed and went from being Andrew's son, and Andrew, my father, became George's father. So that was that lovely twist. I went from being Andrew's son and he became George's father. So that was that lovely, change of roles. Made him very proud. And for the better part of the next 25 years, 30 years, he was very proud. He never forgave me for leaving SBS because he thought I had unfinished business there. But as I said to my father, in order for me to grow, I've got to keep moving. I have to keep giving myself more things to do, more things to learn. And when I leave, it gives the next generation a chance to come in. And that's important too. You have to give the next generation a chance to start at the bottom and move and flex their muscle.
Yeah, and that actually now leads me to Donikian Media. You do, you still work, you do stuff, you do, that's what I read from your website.
Yeah.
You teach public speaking, you help people start, as you just said. What else does Donikian Media do?
Well, because of what we've done and the brand, and what I've managed to establish over the better part of 50 years, is people, if they're looking to cope with the challenges of modern media, they seek us out. We also do an awful lot of special projects. I still do a lot of presentation work. I still do a lot of MC work for special events, especially if they're within my scope and I'm excited by them. I've filmed an international festival of language and culture in Bucharest, in Romania, for Romanian television back in 2016. We've been to America a number of times. We've done a documentary series. We filmed in Armenia, in Yerevan, back in 2018, and made it available to Australian television through SBS, through the SBS On Demand platform. And we gave people a chance to see the modern Armenia and how it looks and how it feels and how it sounds. We brought the sounds, the foods, and the colours of modern Armenia to the Australian television screen. I noticed that the Turkish government was particularly concerned and wanted us to have a disclaimer before each and every program, which reminds me yet again, even if we try and educate people, we always have politics to saunter through, to filter through before we can get to the entertaining part of any program.
Crazy.
So we do everything, anything that appeals. I stay away from teaching politicians how to tell their story. I think let them grow up, let them fight their own battles. But for businessmen and women, for young media figures who want to be better at their craft, who need to understand the most important thing is engagement. If you can't engage, and if you don't understand what you're talking about, then what are you doing?
Very true, very true.
Yeah.
Networking, engagement, and just being curious. I think curiosity is one of the most important characteristics.
Oh, it's an ingredient. If you haven't got it, and if you're not a professional sticky beak, don't bother trying to be a journalist. Because that's what a good journalist is a professional sticky beak, and they have to abide by the statutes and by the ethics of good journalism. And good journalism means you don't tell your story, and you don't tell Elizabeth's story, but you tell the story that's most representative of the facts. And if you can back that up, then you're in a good place.
Yeah.
And I've reminded very early on that one person's freedom fighter is someone else's terrorist.
Oh,
And we've
yes.
seen it on a great many occasions. Depending which hat you're wearing, you're telling a very different story. So a good journalist has an incredible job to tell, and the better they are, the more fearless they are, well, the more support and they'll get from me and people like me.
As you said, because history is his story. It always depends who says the story, isn't it?
Who writes the
How I
story?
define history. Yes, his
Yes.
story.
It's
Yeah,
normally left to the victors, Elizabeth.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
why you get sometimes the particular slant or the particular emphasis. In English, they go emphasis, but emphasis is key. For me, the challenge is to make sure that you tell the story based on everything around you. And I say to young journalists especially, before you leave the venue where you are and you've been telling the story, look around, look behind you. There could be a more compelling bit of the story that's staring at you saying, look at me.
Mhm.
I can remember being 40 years ago, I came to Cyprus, more than 40 years ago, with an original crew from SBS to look at the intercommunal talks between the Turks and the Greeks at the Ledra Palace in Larnaca, in Lefkosia.
Mhm.
And I got a chance to interview Kyprianou, Spiros Kyprianou,
Yes.
and also Glavkos Kleridis,
Yeah.
two wonderful guys.
Yeah.
And here's a bit of fun. I remember saying to Kyprianou, "Thank you very much, Prime Minister, for the interview." He said, "Where are you off to now?" I said, "I'm going to interview the opposition leader." And he said, "Stop right where you are." I said, "Why is that?" He said, "I need to tell you this, and you need to understand it. We don't have an opposition. We are together." And I went, "Yes, Mr. Prime Minister." And I told Glavkos Kleridis the exact same thing when I went into his office. And he said, "Very good man, Mr. Kyprianou. Yes, he's right. We don't have an opposition." Now, let me tell you what the problem is with the government.
Interesting. Oh, he had a
No, they
great.
were wonderful men, wonderful
Ladies
men.
had a great sense of humor. Now, I watched your face before when you were talking about going to Armenia in 2016 or 18, you said.
2018, yes.
You had now let's get away a little bit from all this. What food do you like? Where do you like to travel? Where, because I saw your face light up when you mentioned Armenia.
There's a reason, because there are two cuisines. There's the Western Armenian cuisine and there's the Eastern Armenian cuisine. And the one thing I've learnt is that they are filled with wonderful dishes. There are similarities, and of course, it's like having your mother and grandmother making, two different dishes. Or the same dish. It's slightly different. But I noticed that in Yerevan, you can have your pick, and they are terrific. They'll tell you, this is Western Armenian cuisine for you tonight, or this is Eastern Armenian cuisine. I love it all. I've been to Turkey, I've been to Istanbul, I've been to Cappadocia. The cuisine there is filled with the foods that my great-grandmother used to make, my grandmother used to make, my mother used to make. For me, if you're in Lebanon, if you're in Greece, if you're on the islands, if you're in Cyprus, people say to me, "Ela na fame elinika," and I go, "This food is Eurasian."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and if we're in parts of Jordan, if we're in parts of Oman, we can sit down. The food will not be that different,
No, I
and
so
that's the
agree with
beauty of
you.
it.
Yeah, I always say that. This is if there was no politics and no religion, this area where we are, you
Oh,
mentioned Turkey,
oh,
Lebanon, Jordan, and here, Greece, and it's the same, and people, the mentality is the same, this beautiful hospitality that people have. Every woman's worry here is that somebody would leave their house hungry.
oh, that's exactly right. That's where we get that wonderful. There's a word for it in Greek. It's called zestasia. That is the warmth, right?
Hmm.
That's shown to you by the people who are offering you hospitality. Well, I took my beautiful wife. I took her to Turkey and to Greece. I have my mother has second cousins in Thessaloniki, and my wife is Australian. She doesn't speak Greek. She knows a few Greek words and a few phrases, but we went to Thessaloniki and she couldn't understand the warmth, the level of hospitality that it was extended to her. And she said to me, "How is this possible?" And I said to her, "This is what people in this part of the world do. This is how you are invited into a home and you are afforded a status. And that is, you're our guest." And it's the most wonderful thing. It's a great gift. And that philoxenia, whether it's Greek or whether it's Armenian, whether it's Turkish, we all can say what we like, but it is there. It's for real. And when you're in good homes, they treat you accordingly and you feel extraordinarily special, don't you?
Absolutely. And, time is passing and we're getting to the end. But
Yeah.
now that we have discussed all these things, what do we do? How can we fix this? How is there ever a possibility of peace in this area where we are? What would need to happen? What do you think?
I met the icon hunter, Tasula
Yes.
Georgiou Hatzitofi. And she says to me, "Give me 1 hour anywhere in the world with Erdogan, and I'll explain to him why Cyprus needs to be united, and why we can restore this island and give it its soul back." And who am I to discount or to undermine the icon hunter? If you haven't read the book, it's available on Amazon. It's the story of Tasula Georgiou Hatzitofi and how she was thrown out of her home during the 74 purge in the northern part of Greece when the Turks came in to defend parts of their community. That's their story. History writes it any other way too. It depends on which side of the fence you're looking at. But she has done extraordinarily well for herself. She's the head of a global business, an IT business. She's married beautifully into a wonderful home. They're citizens of the Netherlands. But they love their Cypriot roots. And she would love to see Cyprus not only blossom, but return to a very special place. Whether that happens, there's a wonderful word or another expression in Greek. It's called, or it runs like this: "Εκεί που υπάρχει θέληση θα γίνει." Where there's a will, there's a way. There's got to be a collective will. Do the people of Cyprus, and I mean all of them, want it? If all of them want it, and if the government of the day can see that there's light, then they should work towards it. It doesn't mean something evil. It just means you work together, closer, build pathways, build bridges between some of the problems of the past. It's not going to be easy. Nothing worthwhile is ever easy, Elizabeth. Mm-hmm. Nothing. Mm-hmm. Even making a wonderful dish. You might remember during those few days we had the Diaspora Forum at the Amara Hotel in Limassol. When the kitchen was cooking lunch for all the delegates from around the world, they took time. They took an extraordinary long time, not only to prepare the dishes, but to put them out. And before they said to everyone, "Kopiaste," the doors are open, come and eat. So you saw that it takes time. To do anything worthwhile takes time. So the question you ask is valid. I say to you, my response to you always is, will always be, it depends on what the people want. Do they want it? Is it desirous? Should it be something for them to pursue? I would hope so. But as I said to you, I was there 40 plus years ago, and I saw the first talks between the Turks and the Cypriot Greeks, and how difficult it was. And you had the Americans and the Canadians fully armed to make sure that there'd be no problems. and there was a small contingent of Australians from the Federal Police Force in Canberra, which is the capital of Australia. And they were there, and I said to them, "What are you guys doing here?" They said, "Oh, we have a role to play." I said, "But you're not armed." He said, "That's the role. We're the neutrals." And everyone loved them because they didn't have any weapons. They had a small stick, a cane, a small cane. They used it, I think, just to tap on the door. But they were wonderful, and they got a chance to spend 18 months in Cyprus under the watch of this international UN peacekeeping force. And they learned a lot, and they also understood that it wasn't going to be an easy task. And here we are, 51 years after 74, and the questions still are there to be answered. And I despair. I remember, if I go back to 1974, I was seeing a beautiful Cypriot girl. You know, talk about irony. I was out on a date with a beautiful Cypriot girl, and her father had said to me, "Don't be late." And I thought, oh dear. And we got home just after midnight, and the lights were on, and I couldn't believe that this man thought so little of me that he would leave the lights on. He was still waiting. And that little did I realize, it was the very night when the Turkish forces invaded, and the whole household was up. They were on the phone speaking to Cyprus, to their families, and they were in shock. So I can remember that like it was yesterday. And here we are all these years later, and I'm talking to you in Cyprus. And I watch Limassol and how it's growing. It looks like the Gold Coast of Australia. Towering businesses, hotels everywhere, beautiful buildings, but it's lacking a soul. That's my feeling. It could be anything. And the same applies to Larnaca. It's filled with a lot of businesses and smart companies all wanting to do something special in Cyprus. Yeah, let's see what happens. Maybe you've got to ask more questions, Elizabeth.
I think we will need to have another podcast because there is so much more to say. I could speak to you forever, but we're going to leave it at this. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to being on Most Memorable Journeys today, George Donikian.
Well, it was my pleasure. I couldn't say no to you from the time we first met at the Diaspora Forum. I thought, Elizabeth, we need to have a chat, and it's not going to be for 15 minutes. And you're right, this could be chapter one of quite a few. But thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk about some wonderful times that meant an awful lot of, bring back a lot of special memories.
Thank you. If you enjoy my podcast, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. You will find all the information in the show notes.